Fault Lines.
Welcome back to Fault Lines. Again, if you're listening to Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan. If you want to catch us on the radio, I'll give you a quick tip on where you can. In the DC area, you can listen to us 105.5 FM and 1390 AM. If you're in Kansas City, we're on 102.9 FM and 104.7 FM. Also, 1140 AM. If you want to catch us online, we're also live on Periscope and YouTube right now. Periscope's on Twitter. You can find us twitter.com/FaultLinesRadio. Over on YouTube, check out the Fault Lines Radio channel. Also, check out the Jamarl Thomas channel. Just do a quick search for Jamarl Thomas. You'll find us live in both of those places. We're also a bunch of other places, too. Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music. The list goes on and on, although I think it actually ends there. Regardless, though, let's get back into this conversation real quick. So, yeah, I'm gonna come at this from another sort of weird, different economic perspective. And you know what? We can relate this directly to Sanders. I heard the other day that there are these two definitions of invest. And I'll just throw this out there. I don't know how true this is, but this seemed pretty true to me when I read it. Especially in the sort of social rhetorical sense. One is investment in terms of investing in human capital, investing in industrial capacity, investing in physical resources. Another is basically speculation. You're investing in a stake of a company or a stake of an entity, and you're trying to see how that entity will do. You're buying in with the idea that at some point you're going to sell out. And it seems like we've fallen nationally and internationally into the second category. We're not investing in our human capacity nearly as much as we could be or should be. We're not investing in our industrial capacity or our state capacity nearly as much as we should be. We're not investing in those things. Instead, we're investing, basically drawing out this thin line that we're trying to walk on, and eventually we're going to have to walk off of it. This also applies internationally. Other countries are investing in us technically, but they're not investing in our resources. They're not investing to build us up. They're basically investing for a stake in this giant geopolitical monster that we've created. And those both seem interconnected to me. Those both seem deeply tied. We've talked about these issues with the reserve currency. My point is, if Sanders isn't willing to go after the militaristic stuff, he's not going to have a chance at changing the economy. And we need both. Now, that's the thing. Trump, for everything that was wrong, there were two things that struck me when he was running, at least in terms of what he was talking about. One, he was talking about ending overseas wars, pulling back internationally. And two, he was talking about bringing manufacturing back home. Now, if we did both of those things, and we focused on how to distribute the gains in a way that's not unfair to anybody, that's not unfair to the people who are producing, that's not unfair to the people who are investing, it's not unfair to people. We can do that. Another perspective on this, the people on the left don't like capitalism and the people on the right don't like socialism, but maybe we need more of each. Maybe we need more room for ingenuity, more room for free expression and free productivity, and maybe we need better ways of handling social progress, handling technological progress, and distributing the gains so that the society as a whole is healthy. I don't hear that conversation, man. I want to have that conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so he did try to have that conversation. I mean, that was Sanders' entire platform. Also, I want to push back on the notion that he wasn't talking about international politics. He was. If you remember, he was against the strike for Soleimani. He was against the Honduras or the Bolivia coup. He even called it a coup at the moment that it took place when everybody else was kind of shucking and jiving on that point. He was against the attacks on Venezuela. He even went so far as to try to put out legislation to stop the war in Yemen, something that the other people were basically on board for, and making the argument that, hey, our engagement in Syria looks illegal also. So one of the things that he was attacked in 2016 on was foreign policy. So in this term, he did beef up on the issue of foreign policy and was against the Democratic's typical platform on that stuff. I do agree with you that he should have been louder. And I do agree with you he should have been stronger. And he seemed completely incapable of waging that war. On the other part, look, capitalism doesn't care about productivity in the sense of engineering or whatever. They care about economic growth. How much cash can we make? And if the incentives for making cash boil down to, okay, we're just going to make money off of money as opposed to make money off of building things, then that's what they're going to do because that's the whole point. If you're selling McDonald's or you're working at McDonald's and you're selling hot dogs or hamburgers, the point of that is not the hamburger. The point of that is the profit. And so when you get that hamburger is an expense. The productivity or the products that go into making that hamburger is an expense. So you try to find the cheapest product so you can expropriate the most cash to the top. That's with everything. And so when you get to this final situation of, all right, we're just going to make money off of money, well, that's a problem. And I agree with you, that's a problem. But the catch is every incentive in the world of your political system tells them to do just that. And so that's what they do because that's what the whole point is. I mean, am I wrong on that? Do you think I'm wrong on that? When you have a drug company, that drug company produces a drug. Do you believe they're producing the drug for the sake of the drug, or do you think they're producing the drug for the sake of the profit?
I'll put it like this. I think we'd be a lot richer as a country right now. I think that we would have made a lot more profit if in the mid 1940s we hadn't decided to take on this imperialistic, sort of friendly, grandfatherly, oppressive, tyrannical role in the context of the world. We made a lot of decisions that sacrificed our own health, that sacrificed wages of Americans. That wasn't a forethought out, very conscientious decision as far as I can tell. It was reflexive. We were trying to maintain our global standing, all this stuff. But when it comes to capitalism, again, like I was saying, we need more of that, in my opinion, but we also need more of the socialism, too. Right now, we're so pitted against each other, not necessarily you and I, but ideologically or economically or whatever.
Real quick, I don't understand by the we need more capitalism. I mean, we have capitalism through the wazoo at this point. So what's the more capitalism part that you believe that capitalism contributes in this case, that you need more of?
I'll put it like this. I don't think that real innovation, the potential for real big profit, like in the case of the Hyperloop, for instance, you bring up the Hyperloop. I think the Hyperloop would be profitable. I think it would be totally profitable. It would just take long-term investments that aren't available right now because everybody's frenzied trying to make short-term investments because long-term investments have become really hard in America because we've gutted our manufacturing base, because we've gutted basically every sector of our economy that isn't either oriented around services, intellectual property, or finance.
Stay right there for me. Now, why do you think that's true? Why do you think that happened?
Our imperialism.
No. That's not imperialism. I mean, this is the point that I'm making. I'm making the point that capitalism and imperialism are linked. When you get a country, for example, that says, all right, we can make a product cheaper in China, is it more profitable to make a product in China where you can cut wages to, let's say, $3 as opposed to paying somebody 15 or 16 bucks? Will the capitalists, with the idea of making profit, do that?
I think they would.
And actually, a rational act, right?
No, I don't think it is. And here's why. There's also this conversation about human capital. Wait.
You're saying you don't think they would do that? But that's literally what they've done.
Yeah, but there was this tie-in with the larger push that the United States had at the time, which was, again, to maintain these flows of quote-unquote free trade around the world to keep the Soviet Union hemmed in. And that was a large part of why flows of investment shifted out of the States. It's not just that it was more profitable to do that overseas, because in some ways it was, but that's a short-term decision. In the long run, I would argue, looking at the global economic crisis we seem to be entering right now, we're constantly flirting with the edge of. This is not a set of rational decisions made by rational actors trying to maximize profit.
No, but it is. I think that's the point I'm trying to make to you. It is a perfectly rational act. If you have a company, that company has this philosophical point of view of we need to maximize our profit. You notice that instead of paying workers $15 or $20 here in the United States, you could pay a worker in China or in Thailand or one of these other countries $3 an hour. It is perfectly rational for you to push for trade legislation, for you to get rid of tariffs for those things coming into the country, and you ship the jobs overseas. You can do that for decades. And that's literally what has been taking place in our society.
Here's the thing. Over what time scale? Like, if we're thinking in terms of this abstract process of pursuing profit, it's hit its dead end as far as I can tell. The globalization era, at least economically, seems to be largely over. The coronavirus has exposed all the weaknesses of having these deeply extended supply chains that are super risky in terms of how you can sustain them in terms of the kind of fracas that we're going into right now with the pandemic, but also in general the threat of war. These are not long-term decision makers at hand.
But they don't have to be. If you're running a company, it's not going to be necessarily long-term. They are looking for ways of being profitable. And in their minds, this is a way of being profitable. They don't care about the whole, what's going to take place in 20 years. They care about their bottom line at this moment. That's the way it operates. That's the way it's always operated.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You can do that in the short term, but if it doesn't work in the long term, then it doesn't make sense either. I wouldn't call that rational. You're saying that's rational. I'm saying by definition, that's not.
That's a rational choice because their job is philosophically to make as much profit as possible. You're saying it's irrational in the long run. I agree with you that it's irrational in the long run. That's why the system always crashes.
It's even irrational for them in the long run. That's the point that I'm making. It is even irrational for them in the long run.
Oh, I agree.
If it's irrational for them in the long run, then they're operating within this system of incentives. And here's the thing.
Yes.
Socialism was embedded within capitalism from the 40s on. Socialism in the United States and capitalism were tied hand in hand since at the latest FDR, but arguably quite a bit earlier. We were pursuing these things in tandem. What really messed us up, as far as I can tell, was this decision that we made in the mid-40s and we really escalated into in the early 70s to continue overextending ourselves. And that meant that at home, the people that we would expect to make these rational decisions, people we would expect to be purely driven by greed, actually weren't. They were making short-sighted decisions. They were operating within their own corrupt system of incentives. Now, I don't want to wholeheartedly defend capitalism because at the same time, I was just arguing for socialism too. We need more of both of these things. That's my take.
I guess I just don't understand the first part. I don't think you've made your case well for the first part. I mean, you try to pin this on imperialism, but it was an imperialistic decision for them to put investment into China, which is basically what companies in the United States did. They knew that they could make a buck off of it. I mean, in their heads, globalization was the way forward. That was the way things were going to be. And they made the rational choice that we need to lower profits. If McDonald's today can put in a machine or a computer that will make a hamburger for a nickel cheaper than it would be to pay a worker, they will put in that machine to make that hamburger that's a nickel cheaper. Now, from a larger perspective, meaning a larger rational perspective, you can look at that and say, well, wait a minute, that worker is no longer going to have any money to buy your product. So you are basically stabbing yourself in the kidney in the process of you making that profit. Yes, you're right, Shane. I agree with you long term, but that's not the way they think. That's the point I'm trying to get across to you. That it is a rational choice from the context of a company to try to expand and maximize their profit. Labor is one of the things that is expensive. And so if you can get that labor at a cheaper price, it is infinitely rational to pay off your congressmen, to give them all sorts of cash and everything else for them to get rid of tariffs so you can import that stuff into the country without a charge. That's your system at work. Those are the system of incentives that just work that way. I mean, that's a capitalism thing. That's not an imperialistic thing. I mean, would you agree with that?
No, because here's the thing. Again, they were operating under a different system of incentives before the Second World War. That system of incentives changed, and the context of those changes was what we might call socialism. It was the political economy of the United States that changed the tariffs, that changed this stuff. Capitalism is always bounded by the incentives of whatever governmental systems it's operating within. And that's what changed. The imperialism is what changed that. Again,
no, it's not. That's not true. I mean,
before the
capitalism,
30s,
the whole point of it is profit. Regardless of the system that it's in, the goal of it is profit.
Yeah, but again, that's why we give incentives that constrict what's profitable. That does that in a way that's best for people in general. That's why, again, as far as I can tell, every nation around the world has adopted capitalist principles to varying degrees,
yes.
Whether it's a free market, whatever the case may be.
But I guess I'm trying to pin you down on this very specific point to understand that it is still, the entire point was profit, and that as a system expanded and developed, you had people who were within that system who wanted to get more profit, in which case they would work and give money to political actors to undo some of the laws and legislation that constrain that, especially after the New Deal. I mean, why do you think people are calling for a New Deal?
Well, I mean, but you're talking past me. And we might be talking past each other. I don't want to put it all on you.
I mean, I'm being very specific to kind of point out that our system itself is operating in a particular way. I mean, my argument is basically reality, that objectively speaking, this is what has taken place. And it's not conceptual, it's in fact. We're got to go to a break. I'm sorry. We're back. God, this is a great argument. All right, so we're going to be back in a moment. This is Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan. Join us. We have this awesome conversation. This conversation is going to continue at some point. We'll be back in a moment.